I'm Clark Peters, and this is Founding Fathers, an American Dream. In a sweltering room in Philadelphia, Thomas Jefferson writes the Declaration of Independence. In an open valley, George Washington leads a ragtag army against the mighty British Empire. And in New York City, a furious crowd tears down a statue of the king. 250 years ago, the United States of America was born. But how did the people overthrow British rule? How did they invent a radical new nation? And who lost out along the way? From the Noiser Podcast Network, this is Founding Fathers, an American Dream, the real story of how the U.S. was created and why its legacies still matter. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
It's Monday, July the 23rd, 2018. In the coastal town of Mati, located some 30 kilometers east of Athens on the Greek mainland, the temperature has been rising steadily throughout the morning. By noon, it's pushing 40 degrees centigrade, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The streets are quiet, the atmosphere soporific, as people take refuge from the heat inside their shuttered houses or sip coffee in the shade of local tavernas. Nestled against a picture-perfect backdrop of rolling scrub hills, a beautiful villa gleams in the glaring sunshine, the fierce light casting dappled patterns through the smooth, clear waters of the property's private pool. The air echoes with a gentle hum of cicadas, and a warm, pine-scented wind blows through the open door from the terrace into the house. Inside is a haven of cool, calm darkness, the only sound coming from the rhythmic, ceaseless whir of the air conditioning. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, a newly married couple in their 40s lie sleeping beneath a thin cotton sheet, having been driven inside by the ferocious midday sun. This is Zoe Holohan and her husband of just 4 days, Brian O'Callaghan Westrop. It's the beginning of their honeymoon, and they're making the most of the chance to relax and unwind in their stunning surroundings. After an hour or two, Brian stirs and wakes, then rolls out of bed and walks down the stairs, not waking his sleeping wife. Zoe remains lost in peaceful slumber. Until, seconds later, she hears Brian screaming her name.
His voice had such a tone of urgency that obviously I woke up with a shock.
Dazed, Zoe scrambles out of bed and heads towards Brian. Whatever is happening, it's clearly an emergency. She runs to the top of the stairs.
The weirdest things go through your mind in these scenarios, because I remember being at the top of the stairs and it was a steep wooden staircase, and I remember thinking, Jesus Christ, Zoe, don't fall down the stairs. Because if you fall down the stairs, that'd be the worst thing if you broke a limb on your honeymoon. Little did I know it was going to get a hell of a lot worse than that.
Clinging gingerly to the handrail, her bare feet braced against the wooden treads, Zoe makes her way down the precarious staircase as fast as possible, unsure of what awaits her. When she reaches the bottom, she finds Brian almost in a trance, staring in horror at the view out of the open terrace door. Zoe follows his gaze. And what she sees is the stuff of nightmares.
In that moment, it was like just Brian snapped out of it and ran to shut the door and told me to do the same with the back door. I ran to the back door and closed that too. So we realized we had minutes, if not seconds, to get the hell out of there.
Ever wondered what you would do when disaster strikes? If your life depended on your next decision, could you make the right choice? Welcome to Real Survival Stories. These are the astonishing tales of ordinary people thrown into extraordinary situations. People suddenly forced to fight for their lives. In this episode, we meet Zoe Holohan. In July 2018, she and her husband Brian traveled to Greece to enjoy a relaxing honeymoon, having tied the knot just days before. But what should be one of the happiest times of their lives soon morphs into a horror story right before their eyes, when Zoe and Brian wake from a siesta and find themselves trapped in one of the worst natural disasters in the country's recent history.
You know, we were on honeymoon. We were happy we could finally get to unwind. And then, of course, we woke up the following day on July 23rd, and it all went terribly, terribly wrong from there.
Racing against time, the couple face a desperate scramble to escape before it's too late. But despite their best efforts, it seems that fate is set against them as they encounter hurdle after hurdle and safety continues to elude them. How much bad luck can two people endure before tragedy finally strikes?
It's, in my opinion, a miracle actually anybody got out of there alive. What happened next was absolutely catastrophic.
I'm John Hopkins. From the Noiser Podcast Network, this is Real Survival Stories. It's Sunday, July the 22nd, 2018. The sun hangs like a blazing disk of gold over the eastern coast of Attica, a peninsula in the heartland of Greece. Here, dusty hills dotted with tall pines and gnarled olive trees give way to the tranquil waters of the Aegean. This is an area steeped in history and culture and has become a prime destination for holidaymakers, its proximity to Athens making it ideal for international tourists. In the bustling seaside town of Mati, just up the coast from the port of Rafina, a hire car trundles along narrow, labyrinthine streets. Inside, newly married couple Zoe Holohan and Brian O'Callaghan Westrop scan their surroundings, squinting into the dazzling sunlight as they search for the villa they have booked for their honeymoon. Eventually, the building comes into sight. Brian and Zoe drive through the tall electric gate that guards its driveway, then park up outside the property. Here, they are greeted by the villa's owner, who gives them a tour and supplies helpful information for their stay. In addition to providing restaurant recommendations and directions to local attractions, she also warns them that the area can be prone to power cuts and gives instructions on how to manually open the gate if the electricity fails. The villa is everything Zoe and Brian could have hoped for, and tops off the magical wedding they enjoyed 3 days earlier back home in Ireland.
So we had our family and we had our closest friends there. We went to a beautiful place, a place called Clonabrini House. It was an outdoor wedding in a rose garden, and it was extraordinarily special. But it's hard to talk about because that happened on July the 19th, 2018, and 4 days later, our lives were obliterated.
Now in their 40s, and having both been married before, Zoe and Brian are open about how lucky they are to have found each other. They met via a dating website 4 years earlier, when Zoe was on the verge of giving up after a string of disappointing matches. But with Brian, things were different.
So Brian had a very interesting bio, and he seemed like an intelligent guy. He lived quite close to where I lived, so we agreed to meet one afternoon for coffee. I guess you could say what began as a coffee date turned into lunch, turned into sitting there until the cafe closed at around 6 or 7 in the afternoon evening. And we were getting on so well that we just extended the date. We toddled off to a local bar and decided to have a bite to eat and a few drinks there. And immediately we just hit it off. I kind of thought to myself, right, finally, that doozy date run has ended.
The instant spark between Zoe and Brian soon blossomed into a much deeper connection.
Beyond the physical attraction, there were aspects to his personality that immediately I found attractive. He was world-wise, he was deeply respectful, gentlemanly. He had a bit of a spirit of adventure about him. He liked to travel. But if I were going to describe him now, as I got to know him, I think the essence of Brian was he was a truly kind man. He spent an awful lot of his spare time working in charities. There's a service in Ireland called Blood Bikes. Brian loved his motorbikes. And Blood Bikes basically is a free of charge service where certain bikers travel all across the country with emergency medical supplies. Sometimes it could be a heart transplant, a lung, it could be bloods. And he would do this just because he wanted to help people.
A couple of months after their first date, Brian and Zoe moved in together. Just over 2 years later, they were engaged. For Zoe, who was working in a high-powered media job, this new and happy chapter came after a period when things weren't always easy.
I worked in advertising and sales and newspapers. Really, media was my world when I was younger. I worked in a very high-pressured industry where you had to be an Oscar-winning actress or actor and never show weakness and never show pressure or burnout and continually put that smiling face forward. I'm sure I'm not the only person that felt like they had to do that in the corporate world, but in the quiet times, I was seeking out therapy and I really badly needed help to cope with some of those high-pressured times. Back then, I told nobody, not even my closest friends, that I was struggling. When I was with Brian, certainly we could talk about those things, but that was a later stage when I pretty much got, if you want to put it this way, my mental health act together.
Zoe's struggles have been hard. However, they've also created a steely core of resilience and determination within her.
In my 20s, 30s and 40s, I would have had spells of depression, anxiety, and I definitely suffered from panic attacks in my 40s. So I guess you might say that working through those, either in the guise of therapy or just sheer pedaling through them, but probably helped create some inner strength in me. I would also say, much to the irritation of a lot of my friends, I'm extraordinarily stubborn by nature, but I deem that an advantage because I don't give up very easily.
After the villa owner leaves, Brian and Zoe settle into their accommodation and spend some time exploring their surroundings and stocking up on supplies. As the sun dips below the horizon and the soft shadows of evening set in, the beauty of the area washes over them. The following morning marks the first real day of their honeymoon. They enjoy a long lie-in, then eat brunch in the garden before relaxing by the pool as the temperature slowly starts to rise.
It was extraordinarily hot. We were looking at our phones, we were checking the temperature, and I believe it had got up to 40 by noon, 40 degrees. It was exceptionally hot. We'd jump in the pool to cool off, and then no sooner that you're out again, you'd be exhausted by the heat.
Between refreshing dips in the clear blue water, the couple discuss their recent wedding and make plans for the rest of their 2-week honeymoon. They also take time to phone Brian's mother. It's her birthday today. She's in the middle of a celebratory lunch, so the conversation is short but affectionate.
After that, we did the nerdy thing of changing our Facebook status to married. We were like a pair of teenagers on a countdown, 3, 2, 1. We giggled about it. And then the heat just got too much. This would have been just around lunchtime. The heat got too much.
Forced inside by the fierce midday sun, Zoe and Brian head into the refreshing, air-conditioned darkness of the villa for a siesta, leaving the terrace doors open to try and get some airflow through the house. They stretch out lazily on their bed, the soft, cool sheets a welcome relief to their sun-warmed skin. It isn't long before both are fast asleep. An hour or two passes, and outside, the temperature continues to climb. Sometime in the early afternoon, Brian stirs and blinks his eyes open. Beside him, Zoe is still asleep. Brian pads downstairs, not disturbing her. But just a few seconds later, his voice jolts her from her dreams.
I woke up in the bed with my bikini bottom still on and Brian screaming from downstairs, telling me to get up. And his voice had such a tone of urgency that obviously I woke up with a shock.
Zoe lurches out of bed and down the steep wooden staircase, taking care not to fall. At the bottom of the stairs, a wave of heat engulfs her, far more savage than anything one would expect from the afternoon sun. Still fuzzy, she blinks, and her eyes lock on Brian, who is standing transfixed, staring out of the open terrace door. Confused, Zoe follows his gaze, and then her heart drops.
Brian was just standing there, like he was in a trance, and the whole side of the garden, the whole area that we'd just come in from, the pool, was just filled with flames.
Zoe and Brian stare in disbelief at the fire raging outside the villa in the very place where just hours before they were relaxing, reveling in the glorious Greek sunshine on the first real day of their honeymoon. Now the greenery of the garden is gone, subsumed by an orange inferno. The sight is surreal. Waves of heat roll into the air-conditioned villa through the open terrace door, and already a miasma of smoke is starting to fill the house. Suddenly, Brian snaps out of his trance-like state and lunges to close one set of doors, telling Zoe to do the same at the back of the house. She runs, bare feet slapping against the tiles, pulse drumming in her ears. When she reaches the back door, the true severity of their situation is immediately clear.
The whole back garden and the hills behind, of which we could have a view from the back of the house, were totally on fire. So we realized now we had minutes, if not seconds, to get the hell out of there.
Still wearing nothing but her bikini, Zoe bolts upstairs to throw on some clothes and grab her handbag. There is no telling where they might end up, and having a few key essentials could make all the difference.
I made sure I had the wallets, the passports, our keys, our wedding rings, and that was it. And I just threw on a dress, this long white dress that I'd chosen specifically for the honeymoon. And I threw on this pair of webbed wedge sandals, all new, all beautiful. But I thought the long dress might be a good idea. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought the long dress might be a good idea if we encountered fire.
Seconds later, Zoe is back downstairs. Then she and Brian are running out of the villa towards the car. Exiting the building is like stepping into a furnace. Instantly, they are engulfed in a powerful rush of raw, brutal heat and enveloped in thick clouds of smoke and ash. Coughing and spluttering, they race across the drive to their hire car, yank open the doors, and throw themselves inside. They're just in time.
Outside the car were like these little whirling tornadoes of burning debris. We'd actually stepped into hell. The heat was unbelievable, but we were inside the car, and there was this small moment, this split second where I thought, yeah, we're going to get out of here, we're going to be okay, we're in the car, we're going to zoom out of this, and the car will protect us from the flames.
There's no time to lose. Brian grabs the key fob for the electric gate at the bottom of the drive and jams his thumb down on the buzzer. The gate doesn't move. Alarmed, he presses the button again, but nothing happens.
We tried to open the buzzer on the gate, and the gate wouldn't budge. And then we realized, Jesus Christ, the electricity has been cut off.
They're trapped. When Zoe and Brian arrived the day before, the villa's owner warned them about the potential for power cuts in this area and left them an Allen key to manually unlock the gate if needed. But the key is back inside.
Brian ran back into the house, told me to stay in the car to get the Allen key. I mean, this is all so time sensitive because every second counts. Ran in, eventually he found it. It could have been seconds, it felt like hours. And he came back out. Now at this stage, the flames were pretty much surrounding the car. Brian got to the gate and wasted crucial minutes trying everything to winch open this bloody gate. I got out of the car. I had to get out his side because the passenger side was now surrounded by flames, and tried to help him open, and we couldn't open the gate.
Zoe and Brian fumble with the Allen key, hauling at the gate as the heat builds mercilessly at their backs. But it's no use. They whirl around, searching for any other exit. As they do so, they see that their car has been swallowed by the fire. Even if they could open the gate now, there's no way they can get back in their vehicle. Their only choice is to scale the 3-meter-high gate and make a run for it on foot. Losing no time, Zoe bunches up her long white dress and Brian pushes her up. She clambers over the top of the barrier, then tumbles down the other side. She lands hard on the ground, her new wedged sandals colliding with the concrete as her left leg twists at an unnatural angle. Searing pain stabs through her knee.
I landed badly because of the wedge shoes, and I dislocated my kneecap, my patella. Slipped out of place, and that hurt, but when you're in a state of panic like that, your body handles pain in a different way. I registered it, but I ignored it.
Seconds later, Brian lands beside Zoe, and they scramble awkwardly to their feet. The couple stare at each other. They've overcome the first hurdle, but their survival is far from assured.
I remember looking at him and holding his hands and begging him and saying, are we going to survive? And, Brian was the sort of man who'd never lie. I don't think he was capable of telling a lie, so he just looked me in the eyes and he said, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And now we have to run.
Hand in hand, Zoe and Brian race up the main road, throats dry, the taste of ash on their tongues. But after just a few hundred meters, they run into a huge, impenetrable wall of fire. Having only arrived the day before, the couple haven't got their bearings yet. With their path now blocked, they turn and head back downhill in what they assume is the direction of the sea. If they can reach the water, they may stand a chance. But with the fire intensifying every minute, that is no guarantee.
We'd literally just jumped from the frying pan into the fire, quite literally. It was like Dante's Inferno everywhere around us were just walls of fire. It's hard to describe the level of heat. Every breath we took, it was like swallowing acid. It literally burned every single breath, so we were almost trying not to breathe. Our eyes were streaming, the darkness. We might as well have been stepping out into the middle of the night. It was that dark, and the smoke was that thick, and the only flashes of light were from red raw flames all around us. It was so painful to breathe, but we had to keep moving.
Stumbling, Zoe and Brian press on through the smoky, red-tinged hellscape, focusing only on reaching the sanctuary of the sea and the safety of its deep blue waters. The roar of the fire is so deafening they can barely hear each other speak. With streaming eyes, they scan their surroundings as they run, trying not to get disorientated in the ashy gloom. And then, something materializes out of the darkness ahead of them. A figure.
We bumped into this woman who just kind of was like a spectre who came out of the smoke from nowhere. She spoke English and she basically told us, you can't go down there. There's no way to pass. The trees are down and the trees are on fire.
Seconds later, the woman vanishes again into the smoke. With their planned escape route now cut off, Zoe and Brian have no choice but to turn back up the hill once more and hope they can veer off onto a side road. Before they have a chance to go far, Zoe suddenly feels heat rising up her legs.
I looked down and I realized my dress was on fire. The fabric was just eating into my legs. It was like my flesh was being eaten by flames, and it was absolute agony.
Brian immediately lunges for Zoe's dress, beating at the heavy embroidered fabric with his bare hands. By the time the fire is extinguished, his palms are scorched and badly blistered, and Zoe's legs are throbbing with pain. In any normal circumstances, they'd take a moment to stop and assess the damage, but there is no time. Chests heaving, they stumble onwards, gasping down the dry, smoke-choked air. Around them, the fire devours everything in its path. As they run, Zoe and Brian squint into the darkness, trying to find any way out of the blaze. And then, their eyes alight on a huddle of figures emerging from the gloom. The figures are small, alarmingly so.
There was like a clearing in the smoke, and in front of us were 5 tiny children. One was even in a nappy. And at the time, if you'd asked me, I wouldn't have been able to tell you whether there were 3, 4 or 5 children. All we saw was this little bundle of little people standing there with no one around them. And your instincts immediately as adults take over. So we ran to them and we just scooped them up in our arms, not knowing what the hell we were going to do with these kids or where we were going to go. And then again, out of nowhere, out of the smoke, came this car.
Perhaps the couple's luck has finally changed. The small, decrepit car clangs to a halt beside them. Inside are 3 adults, their faces taut with fear and urgency. Zoe and Brian don't hesitate for a moment.
We opened the back door and we just threw the kids in the car. And then we realized there's no room for us. It was a small car. So we begged them to open the boot, which they did. And Brian and I climbed in. And then the car took off at a serious speed.
Wedged into the boot, Zoe and Brian do their best to hold the cover shut as they jolt along the bumpy roads. But there isn't enough room for it to close completely. All they can do is cling onto the car and to each other, trying to avoid being thrown out of the vehicle as it tears through the darkness. But the fire is close behind them.
And I used my left hand to hold on to the boot to try and pull the boot over us, but because we couldn't close it shut fully, but as we were doing so, the flames were just filling the boot. They were coming in. My hair, I had long hair extensions from the wedding, and my hair had totally gone on fire at this stage and was just eating my face. I can remember feeling that my left eye was just beginning to close. And my dress was on fire again. So that's how quickly these flames were leaping in on top of us. And my hand was welded to the boot, to the lid of the boot.
Despite the speed of the car, the blaze is faster. Over the thundering roar of the inferno and the screech of the engine, Zoe can vaguely make out Brian's voice.
And Brian was talking to me, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. I don't know whether he was praying or something, I don't know, because the roar of the flames was so loud. And next thing, the car crashed.
Brakes squeal as the car swerves just a second too late, the driver wrestling with the steering wheel in zero visibility. Then comes the sickening crunch of metal. Shockwaves rip through the vehicle, sending a jarring jolt through its passengers as its framework crumples. A heartbeat later, a burning tree comes crashing down, its flaming branches landing with a thud on the boot, smothering Zoe and Brian in a shower of sparks and flaming debris. And then, the unthinkable happens.
The shunt of the crash caused Brian to fall out. He just flew out of the boot, and I couldn't hold on to him, tried to. And then he just screamed, "Why?" That was his last word, and fell onto the road and then just disappeared into the flames and died right in front of my eyes. And I tried to call out to him. I knew what I was seeing, but I just wanted him to hear my voice as his last voice. I told him I loved him. At that I just reckoned I'd be joining him soon anyway, because I was in my coffin. The boot of the burning car was my coffin. And I closed my eyes. And he was gone.
In a matter of seconds, Zoe's entire world has shifted on its axis, her life shattered in a single devastating moment. And now, trapped inside the wreckage of the flame-filled car, crushed by a collapsed, burning tree, it seems impossible that she can survive for much longer. But then, something unexpected happens. Zoe's one working eye twitches and blinks open. And there, emerging from the barrage of flames, is the shape of a person heading straight towards her. This is Manos Tsaliagos, a volunteer firefighter.
Initially, when he saw me, he thought I was dead because I was under these embers, these burning embers. And I thought it was because he heard my voice calling to Brian. But no, he said my right eye flickered. And he said it was just the tiniest flicker because the left side of my face now had been sealed closed. But he saw the right eye flicker, so he carried me out of the boot of the car. And I remember I could see him. I remember him lifting me up, peeled me out of the boot and carried me through literally wall after wall of flames.
Shielding Zoe's face with his arm, Manos carries her through the blaze, gently trying to comfort her in Greek. On the other side of the flames, he places her in a waiting fire engine. Soon, the truck takes off, heading away from the worst of the danger. As the burning hellscape speeds past the window, Zoe's one working eye fixes on her hand.
My left hand, the one that had been welded to the boot, hardly looked like a hand anymore. It was a thing of a horror movie. It was like shriveled up, curled bones. There was no skin left on it anymore, just screeds of flesh hanging on it. And I remember thinking, that's what my hand looks like. What does my face look like? Which might sound like a very stupid thing to say, considering what had just happened to Brian, but these are the things that go through your mind.
The fire engine eventually pulls up outside a small building on the edge of town. Manos carries Zoe inside and lays her on a bench, where a young woman takes over her care. The language barrier makes communication near impossible, but with her dress still smouldering and searing her flesh, Zoe manages to mime a pair of scissors. Finally understanding, her carer cuts off her clothes and shoes, then covers her in a tin foil blanket. The relief is only temporary. Zoe's burns are so bad that the embroidered pattern of her dress has been imprinted into her skin. With no pain relief to hand, she is in agony. As she waits for an ambulance, she pleads for help, but not for herself.
So I lay there for a long time, begging them to find Brian. I already had gone into the moment of denial, and somebody, eventually a translator, came in. And I said, you have to find Brian. And I started to describe him. I started to describe his tattoos. I said, where, that man who saved me, he's there. Tell him to go back. And he said, no one's going back there. No one's going back there today.
When an ambulance does finally arrive to take Zoe to hospital, things somehow get even worse.
It was a horrific journey. The ambulance drivers were not kind people. They were laughing. They told me to shut up when I started to cry about my husband. So then I shut up and I just thought to myself, it doesn't really matter anyway. Brian's dead and I'm going to be dead soon.
After a brutal journey, Zoe is stretchered into hospital and left on a trolley. Inside an emergency department in pandemonium. The air reeks of blood, smoke, and burnt flesh, and there are people everywhere. The wildfire has clearly been devastating, and in the chaos, not everyone is seen to. After several hours, Zoe is eventually moved out of the emergency department to a room on another floor. And here, she is once again left without medical attention.
No pain relief. I can't describe to you what severe burns feel like. My eye was cooked shut at this stage, and I actually did catch a glimpse of my face in a window. My face had totally melted, cooked. I could hardly move my limbs at this stage. The burns on my legs and my hand were so severe, they went right down to the bones. So the bones were actually burned. But they left me there. I called to a nurse who was walking up and down, who told me she couldn't give me any pain medication, in perfect English. She couldn't give me any pain medication until I'd been seen by a doctor. I was just begging for anything, something. And I just lay there thinking, I'm surely going to die in this hellhole.
Zoe endures a long, dreadful night. It's only when representatives of the Irish embassy get involved the following morning that things change. she is assessed by a doctor and finally given pain relief many hours after first arriving. Bizarrely, throughout her ordeal, she has managed to hold on to her handbag containing the essentials she picked up before evacuating the villa. Inside it is her health insurance card, a small plastic rectangle that at this moment in time makes all the difference. Zoe's cover affords her private healthcare, and that very day, the embassy representatives managed to get her transferred to a private hospital.
That hospital was the very opposite of the first hospital. I could not describe how immensely kind and gentle and loving the surgeon and all the nurses and doctors were. I mean, they cared for me astonishingly, beautifully well. They were just gorgeous people.
Almost immediately, work begins to treat the worst of her injuries. She has sustained severe burns across her body, with those on her legs and hands being the most serious. Initially, medics aren't even sure her left hand can be saved, or if she'll regain sight in her damaged eye. It is also not clear whether she'll ever walk again. But it's here that Zoe's inner strength and stubbornness begin to kick in.
I went, bugger that. They don't know who they're dealing with. I will walk again, even though I couldn't even move my entire body. I was bandaged literally from head to toe. But I remember distinctly thinking, no, I will. That's not going to happen to me.
Alongside her grueling physical recovery, Zoe is also dealing with intense grief and trauma. Despite having directly witnessed what happened to Brian, it's initially impossible to come to terms with.
I started to go into a phase of denial where I thought, if I'd been rescued, then surely Brian must be rescued too. And my prime worry was that he wouldn't recognize me because I was that badly disfigured. That's what I kept telling anybody who'd be there. Listen, would you let them know my name is Zoe, just in case somebody's wandering around the hospital looking for me?
It's only when one of Zoe's brothers flies out and confirms Brian's death that she begins to accept what she saw. Somehow, through the anguish, she finds the strength to carry on fighting. Slowly, day by day, week by week, she inches closer towards physical recovery. Eventually, she hits the huge milestone of being able to take a few tentative, supported steps. And then, as if the universe had not quite finished torturing Zoe, she gets some devastating news.
Life can be astonishingly cruel sometimes. It was the day I managed to take my first steps. And it was a big day. It was a moment where I kind of felt that maybe I will walk again. But that evening turned into something even more tragic because my father suddenly passed away. So 3 weeks after Brian died, my dad died of a heart attack. And I think he died of a broken heart, to be honest with you, because he had been ill and, so he couldn't travel over. But they'd been told on numerous occasions they didn't know if I'd make it through. So I don't know what he was thinking in his final moments, but he passed and Dad was my biggest ally, my cheerleader. So he was also taken from me and I couldn't even attend his funeral because I was still in intensive care.
Despite the complex web of grief she is caught in, Zoe perseveres. 1 month to the day after the fire that changed everything, she is considered stable enough to be transferred to a hospital in Dublin so that she can be closer to her family. During the plane journey home, she starts showing symptoms of a rare and serious condition called toxic epidermal necrolysis, or TEN, which causes her skin to blister and peel off in large areas. It can result in numerous complications, including sepsis, pneumonia, and multiple organ failure, and it frequently proves fatal. By the time Zoe lands in Dublin and is transported to the burns unit at St. James's Hospital, she is drifting in and out of consciousness. Soon, her condition has deteriorated so severely that she is placed in an induced coma.
My poor family, who expected, to see me, if not well, at least conscious and able to speak when I returned home, had to once again visit me in intensive care. And this time the prognosis really wasn't looking good. So they basically told them to say their goodbyes.
For the next few weeks, Zoe's medical team fight to save her life, giving her a tracheostomy to help her breathe and a cocktail of different drugs and antibiotics. Despite the odds, she does eventually pull through. She awakes into a new, profoundly challenging reality.
When I eventually awoke, utterly confused, no idea where I was, connected to all these beeping machines, it was a very confusing awakening, but I realized that actually I was in a worse off place than I'd started when I left Greece. And the next few months I would spend in hospital learning how to walk, talk, eat, breathe, and use my hands again.
A couple of months after waking from her coma, Zoe is finally discharged from hospital and returns home to the apartment she shared with Brian for many happy years.
Everything, how would I put it, everything psychological, everything emotional was put on freeze frame because all of my energy for so long in the hospital was put into physical survival. I literally was fighting with every fiber of my being to physically survive. So when I got home, it was like this grief bomb just exploded. And I suddenly realized I didn't want to be here anymore. My two favorite people were gone. Brian, my soulmate, Dad, who really was my best pal. Even my cat had passed away from sadness while I was in hospital for so long. And I was disfigured. You know, I was looking towards life in a dramatically altered physique. I had complex grief and horrific PTSD. The flashbacks were absolutely terrifying, and they could be set off by the weirdest things. Somebody would light a cigarette, I'd smell the smoke, and bam, I'd be back there.
It's only with years of work and therapy that Zoe is slowly able to disentangle herself from the shackles of grief and trauma. She begins to piece together a new chapter in her life. In time, she writes a book about her experiences, partly as a way of trying to process what she's been through.
First of all, it was without a doubt a love letter to Brian. I felt it was part of his legacy. I wanted to explain to the world what a good man we'd lost. It was without a doubt also a love letter to my father, Colin. He was an artist. He was the most beautiful soul. He taught me how to see beauty everywhere. And yeah, miss him and Brian to this day. But it was also my way of I don't know, thanking all the people, the phenomenal medical community. And then what happened halfway along as I was writing, I kind of realized there was this story unfolding that I believe is quite extraordinary. It's extraordinary because I'm still here. You know, I sometimes think, well, really, I shouldn't be. I should have died in the fire. I should have died from sepsis. You know, I should have died from multiple organ failure, but I didn't. And there was something that kept me here. And I started to think, well, then what do I do with that? If I've been given this gift of a second chance at life, well, then I better bloody well do something good with it.
And that's exactly what Zoe does. Her book is a bestseller, and in time she becomes an inspirational speaker, sharing her story of fortitude with others.
Things developed, and I realized that the message I wanted to give out was genuinely one of resilience and proving that as human beings, we are much stronger than we often give ourselves credit for. We're phenomenal. Humans are phenomenal. And I wanted, particularly at the moment, you know, the world is a very frightening place at the moment. There's a lot of anger and hatred out there. And I wanted to share, and I continue to want to share the message that there's absolutely beautiful, pure goodness out there too.
The 2018 Attica wildfires were at the time the deadliest seen in Europe in the 21st century. They devastated thousands of homes and resulted in over 100 deaths, including that of Brian. Incredibly, everyone else in the car carrying Brian and Zoe survived after the crash, including the 5 children they instinctively saved from the flames. Zoe's life changed forever after the fire, and her journey remains ongoing to this day. Despite the horrors she endured, she has refused to let them define her or prevent her from living a good life. It is a phoenix-like story of recovery.
You can't turn back the clock. You can't bring back people who were killed. And you can't, wind back the clock and give me back the body or the mind that I used to have. But I will say that I don't want to carry anger and bitterness with me in my soul as I move forward either, and I strive really to live a happy life. This is going to sound so nerdy, but I write down 3 things I'm grateful for every single day. To root myself in the moment and realize how lucky I am to still be here. I'll never ultimately get over what happened, but I have allowed myself to move on. I'm allowing myself to embrace the second chance of life properly. The healing journey goes on. I'm still getting surgeries. I'm still doing all that other stuff, therapies in hospital. But I'm also embracing a real life again. This is the next stage. But I just want to reassure people that you can survive the worst and come through the other side.